Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl Podcast Extra, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. The Tough Girl Podcast Extra is when we go back and speak with previous guests. And the reason that I'm able to produce the Tough Girl Extra podcast is due to the financial support of patrons. To find out more about supporting your favorite podcast and becoming a patron, please check out Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. All patrons will get their name on a dedicated patrons page on the Tough Girl website. All female patrons $5 and above are invited to join the closed Facebook group, the Tough Girl Tribe. I just want to say a massive thank you to our recent patrons who have signed up: Hannah Brown, Melissa Cooper, Monica Aguilera, Petra Ellis, Sarah Reed, Emma Sirona McDonald, Louise Fraser, Emily Knight, Maddie Churchhouse, Gail Short, Rachel McCleary, Tasman Douglas, Simona Telford, and Harrod Edwards, Gina Samaria, Nikki Hoppy, and Sophie Power. Thank you so much for signing up as a patron. It really does make a massive difference. There's now over 250 individuals all around the world who are supporting the Tough Girl podcast and supporting the mission to increase the amount of female role models in the media. Tribe, I'm so excited that we're catching up with Melissa Urie, who is the first woman to complete UberMan in California, which she did in October 2019. So Melissa was first on the Tough Girl podcast back in 2017, where she shared more about her life, how she got into fitness, doing ultra challenges such as the Epic 5. We also did a Facebook Live when I was in Melbourne in February 2019. And that episode was basically broken down into two parts, and we focused the first part on like Ultraman, and the second one was focused on the training for UberMan. Melissa, how are you doing?
Hey, Sarah. So nice to chat to you again.
Are you still over in California at the moment, or are you back in Australia?
No, I'm back home in Australia. I flew back about a week ago. So, yes, I'm adjusting to the different time zone, and I'm settling back into normal home life again.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it is absolutely phenomenal what you've achieved. But before we get into that, for those who maybe haven't heard the first episode, do you just want to tell everybody just a little bit more about you and your background and who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a nurse. I live in Melbourne, and I started getting into kind of sport and fitness probably a bit more seriously. I started triathlon in 2005 after I had finished my uni degree, started working, and I'm like, okay, time to focus a bit on myself. I hadn't really done a lot before then, just kind of dabbled a little bit. I would always grown up swimming, but never really taken, my fitness very seriously. So, I started triathlon, started running around that time. And then the longer I went, the more fun that I started having. So I did my first Ironman 10 years ago in 2009. And then I started in ultra triathlons in 2014 in Canada. So, yes, I've been in the sport for a little while. I don't feel like I'm, one of those people who've been around forever and a day and know everything, but I definitely have been around for a while. And, I just absolutely love the multiple day races. That's where my heart lies.
Which is incredible. And you just, in 2019, you just took it to a whole new level with UberMan. Do you want to share what UberMan is and why you wanted to do it?
Yeah. So UberMan is it's a triathlon. It's very different to anything I've done before. So it involves the Catalina Channel swim, which is a 34-kilometer swim. And then you, so from Catalina Island across to Palos Verdes in California, and then you ride from there through over 600 kilometers. I think it ends up being about 630, 40, I don't know, something like that, around to the Badwater basin. And then you do the Badwater run, which is 216 kilometers through to the trailhead of Mt Whitney. And then you are done. Then you stop and sleep. The reason why I wanted to do it, it kind of swung around in my head for a little while before I actually committed to doing it. I loved the idea of being the first female to do it because no other female had lined up to attempt to do it before. And I just happened to be the only female lining up this year. So that was pretty cool. And also I wanted a different challenge. I have looked at the Catalina swim and the Badwater run as ones that I wanted to do in the future, and then kind of finding out that this event incorporated both of them, I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. So I thought, why not just do both with a bit of a bike ride in between?
Oh my God, absolutely incredible. And just massive, massive, massive congratulations. I mean, I sometimes think it's almost like hard to comprehend that, like, the distances and the fact that you're doing it continuously. When we spoke, you had basically 8 months to train and prepare for this race. Tell us more about your training. How did it go? What were the highs? What were the lows? What was most challenging?
Yeah, so I had come back from Ultraman Hawaii in November. So I took December off and then started at the start of January training with my coach. I always want to focus on the run whenever I'm doing any race builds or anything. That's my weakness. It's something I always feel like I need to work on. So over the course of the time training for UberMan, I did 5 50K runs, because in my mind, I wanted the 50K distance to not be an intimidating distance anymore, and just kind of like, oh yeah, turn up 50K, no big deal, get through the distance, that's fine. And that actually ended up happening. It ended up just being like, oh yeah, fair enough, I'll just come and I'll get through, and I'll get through no matter what. And it's, wasn't a scary distance, because then I thought, well, towards the back end of the run, when you're trying to kind of push through and, you're mentally getting a bit worn down, I was like, well, if I have about 40, 50Ks to go, then I'll be like, well, I've done this. I know what this distance is all about, so I can get through it. So that was kind of the thinking behind that. I also did a 60-kilometer trail run through the Grampians, and I threw in a 100K run as well, because I never run over 60K before. I'd run 84 in Ultraman a few times, but I'd never really run further than that. So I wanted to do 100K, because I knew a 100-miler would take too much out of me then to have quality training for too long after that. But I thought, well, 100K is manageable, so I'd be able to do that and still be able to recover, and then continue to train okay after that period of time. So I threw that one in as well, just see how I went on my feet for a longer period of time as well. I started training specifically for UberMan in about June. I'm pretty sure it was with my coach. She, said to me, okay, now we're going to start like specific UberMan training. I was like, yep, no worries. And the idea that she had behind, how we're going to train is to, what she was referring to as overloading one discipline a week. So I would do maybe 5 or 6 swims in a week, just to have a lot of swimming in my arms and swimming in my body, and do like a couple of times I did a late night swim. So I'd be, in the pool at like 8:30, 9 p.m. and then back the next day at like 5:30 in the morning. So it's that building fatigue, but then still being able to, do sessions with that fatigue. And we do the same with the bike. Like I do a lot of wind trainer sessions and then long rides on my days off. And with runs, it was generally incorporated around races that those overload weeks were. So, if I was doing a 50K run the day before, I'd be running like 10, 15 kilometers or something. So it's, about how my body was going to respond with fatigue as well. So that was a very different way of training that I haven't done before. So that was a bit interesting. I found this build probably the hardest that I've done mentally, just because I already decided before, when I was starting to train for it, this is going to be my last ultra for a while. Like, it's going to be my 4th ultra in the last 5 years. Generally, I do like one really big race a year, and I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm just getting tired, I'm getting worn down, and mentally I'm just getting a bit more beaten down than normal from all the training and everything. So I'm like, okay, well, this is telling me that I need a break. And if nothing else, then, the way mentally I was responding to all the training, it just seemed to be, it was a lot harder than normal. And I just had to kind of push through a lot more and, kind of keep myself on track with a lot more energy to my mental side of things. So that really reinforced that, it's time now to have a break. And, I absolutely love everything that I've done, but it's just one of those things where I can't keep going again and again and again, because I know I'll just end up, sitting in the corner crying and rocking myself to sleep. So yeah, it kind of can get a little bit too much. So I think that was probably the most challenging part of it all. I mean, I do love the training, and some of my favorite sessions are the super, super long ones, the 8-9 hour bike rides that, I'm going up and down hills and things, just because I like that, the time when you're getting to the end and you're just like, oh, I just want to get this done, I just want to get this finished, and having to really kind of switch on and focus and get yourself through. I really quite enjoy, having to challenge myself in that way. But yeah, I think just the, having to keep showing up day after day and, pushing through all the fatigue that I was having, and work was incredibly busy during that time as well. So it was just, it just was a lot. It was a lot this time around.
Yeah, I was going to say, it just sounds so full on. And that's the thing, you are working a full-time job while you're doing a huge amount of training. You said things got interesting with fatigue. Well, what do you mean by that? What happened?
It just when you're really, really tired and your patient's at a, kind of at a level where you probably need to just sleep for a week to be able to get back things on top again. I think I was just more tired because I wasn't really having anywhere in my life that was a break from anything. So, previously work wasn't incredibly busy, or, when work was busy, training, wasn't at that peak time, but it just felt like everything was peaking at the same time. So I ended up getting sick a couple of times, which, usually I'd never get sick. So that's really quite unusual, but that really just kind of says to me on how worn down that I was physically, just from the fatigue and the training and everything else. So yeah, it was just a lot more than I think I've experienced previously, or maybe I've just looked with rose-colored glasses back on previous builds and maybe it was exactly the same, but it just kind of felt it was always a lot more this time round.
Yeah. What was it like mentally in the run-up to actually, when the countdown really started, suddenly it's like a month to go, 3 weeks to go, 2 weeks to go, oh my God, we're getting on the plane to fly to California. What was that like?
Yeah, it was good. I was well and truly ready because I haven't had a holiday since January, and just because I needed to kind of bank all my holidays at once, and thankfully my work are very understanding, and they allow me to take off 2 months off work and kind of stack all my holidays together. But it was just really, really really hard. I was kind of walking around, and I always feel like I switch off before the week or so before I actually go on leave, and there's a lot of things happening, and I'm like, you know what, I'm sorry, I just can't care about this right now. It's like I felt a little bit bad for my work colleagues, but I'm like, I'm already on holiday mode, people. I'm sorry. I will be here. I will be physically present, but just don't mind me if I've mentally switched off a bit. And I guess the other part was, because for us, UberMan was very, very different than any other event that we've been to before. So, my husband and I, we had to kind of do a lot of the background work. We weren't going to be given a nice big folder with all the information about the local area and all the, clear maps and everything. Thankfully, there was a woman on one of the other crews, Fiona, who had hand done all the maps and made sure that all the turns and everything were right, because previous to that it was just some paper maps. And we're like, well, no, we actually want to, upload it onto our Garmins. We want to have, a bit more kind of technology happening here. So there was a lot of behind the scenes work that the crews were doing, and, making sure that we had our vehicle booked, our RV, and a lot of kind of other background work that I was getting really overwhelmed with. I'm saying to my husband, I'm like, you really need to help me with this, because I am just really struggling and I just can't think about everything. It's just too much. So yeah, there was a decent amount of stress, I think, beforehand, and just getting on the plane, I was like, all right, well, we just deal with whatever happens. But thankfully I'd already organized to go over, and I stayed with a friend in San Diego for a few weeks before UberMan started. So I managed to do a 70.3 and a 10-mile swim and have a bit of time to train and just chill out and get all of that work and stress out of my mind and out of my body. So I had some extra time just to chill before it all started. So I think that really helped as well.
Oh my God, 100%. And how did you feel sort of on the start line? Did you mentally, did you feel ready? Were you feeling a bit intimidated, or were you just, I don't know, yeah, what was going through your head just before the whistle goes?
Yeah, so it was again, it's kind of weird. So, I mean, we all didn't start at the same time because we all had boat captains, and you go over to Catalina Island. You start at nighttime, so I started just after 10 p.m. And originally my plan was to start at about 11 because I talked to some marathon swimmer friends, and they're like, oh, the Catalina swim starts, generally about 11 p.m. midnight. And I was like, okay, well, if the normal swimmers do that, then that's obviously the best time of night to swim. But then I was like, well, we're just sitting around. I may as well just start. That was about 9:30. I said to the captain, I was like, are you okay if I start at 10? He's like, yeah, that's fine. Like he was really chilled. But just before I jumped in the water, because it's, the middle of the night, it's dark, and then you have to swim to the beach, and then you get out, and then, then your swim officially starts when you get back in the water at the beach. I kind of felt the same really as I feel before any race. Like I'm excited, I'm nervous, just kind of feeling a lot of just mixed emotions about all of it. And my main feeling is always just like, okay, let's just get this started. Like let's just do this, because once I'm in the water and once I'm starting swimming, then I relax. But before that time, it's all that kind of nervous energy and, the unknown about what you're just about to embark on. It is pretty big. And I think, it was starting to sink in about the enormity about what I was about to do as well, because I don't ever really think about the whole event as one big thing, because it becomes way too overwhelming, and I can't think about, okay, well, I have to swim for 34 Ks and then I'm riding for 600 and whatever, and then I'm running for 200 and whatever. And I was like, it's too much. I can't do that. So I was like, okay, get in, start swimming, and then we'll just take it as little tiny chunks as we go along. But yeah, every so often kind of the enormity of it hits you and you're just like, whoa, okay, this is crazy.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
How did the swim go? What was that part of the journey like?
Yeah, it was good. I've never swum at nighttime before, so that was definitely a very, very different experience. So that was actually really fun. I was actually quite excited beforehand about doing that. A lot of people were saying, oh, swimming at night, is that really scary? And it wasn't. And I always manage my anxiety around things like this, around risk. I'm like, okay, so what's the risk of something going wrong? I'm like, well, I have a kayaker with me. I have, 3 people on the boat who are all like boat captain and, deckhand and 2IC, as well as my 2 crew members and another guy who was doing a documentary as I went along. So I'm like, I have all these pairs of eyes on me. So out of, if anything goes wrong, they're going to know and they're going to be able to help. So I was never worried. I was never worried about my safety. I was never worried about anything like that. So within it's probably like the first hour or so, I started to feel the cold, and I was like, oh no, like this is not a good sign, because, I was only just starting the swim. And we had a whole bunch of thermoses that we were going to take on the boat, but we forgot and left them at the accommodation. So instead, what my crew did is they warmed up some water in the microwave that was on the boat, and so I was able just to like tip that down my wetsuit to help keep me warm. And so that actually worked really, really well. Initially, the first, it was about 20K. The tide was pushing me along, and it was so easy to swim. It was a really, really favorable tide. I almost felt like I didn't really need to put in a lot of effort to still move at quite a good pace. And I mean, obviously I still was swimming, but I didn't want to put in any real effort, because I was like, well, this is only such a small part of this whole big adventure. I don't want to completely exhaust myself now and then not be able to, get and ride after I'm done. So I just really just took it easy. I had my wetsuit on, so it wasn't an official channel crossing. And we taped my neck with some tape, but that only lasted probably about 10 kilometers before it had all kind of rolled up and ended up being quite useless. So then I took it off and I was like, oh, well, I'll just, deal with it afterwards. So my neck got absolutely torn to shreds by my wetsuit, just rubbing on it and chafing. So that ended up being quite significant later on. So that wasn't great. But, one stage my kayak, I said, oh, do you want me to do something about that? Is there anything I can give you to help? I was like, no, it's fine. We'll just have to deal with it later. Because by that stage it had already rubbed pretty badly. So I was like, oh, well, we'll just have to deal with it later. There was one point, it went on for like a good 3-4 hours or something, where I was swimming along and there was all these, I don't even know what they are. I think they're like little salt things, or someone said they're little calamari. Anyway, they're like little kind of rectangle things just floating in the ocean. And because I had the light from the boat shining in my direction, they were all illuminated. And it was just absolutely magical. Like, every so often they'd smack me on the nose, or like I'd accidentally hit one with my hand or something. But majority of the time I was just like swimming along, just gliding along on top of them. And it was just a really beautiful thing to, swim along. And one of my crew said to me, she's like, they think you're their mermaid. I was like, oh, it was very, very sweet. It was very kind. I did feel a bit sick on the swim, and I vomited a few times, so that wasn't very pleasant at all. I ended up not being able to pee for a good number of hours, so that just made my stomach feel really bloated and distended, and it just, meant that the food that I was taking, the nutrition I was taking in, didn't have anywhere to go, so I just kept vomiting it back up again. But I was like, well, I can't stop eating. I need to, continue to have nutrition. So I just, kept forcing it down. And I was like, well, hopefully some of it's going to get absorbed and we'll just see how we go. And then eventually, my stomach settled down, and then that was okay. The hardest part of the swim, I think, for me was towards the end. So I'd had a chat to a guy who does a lot of kayaking for Catalina swims, and he said to me, like, don't look up in the last quarter of your swim. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then, of course, I did. And, of course, I kept looking. I'm like, oh, the shore's not close. Yeah, awesome. And, I was kind of looking at my watch, and I was like, oh, yeah, it's about 10 hours. Okay, I'm probably about an hour from shore. That'll be fine. But it ended up being about 2 hours before I got in, because the shore is extremely deceptive. Like, you look and you think you're not too far away, and you look again, you're like, have I even moved? Like, it was really hard, and you can't do any underwater navigation because you can't see the bottom. So you can't actually have that reinforcement of, yes, I am moving forward. And I kept looking at my kayaker and I'm like, well, he's still like paddling, so he is obviously moving forward. So obviously I'm moving, but it just feels like you're not. It feels like you're just in the one spot. But yeah, then eventually I did get to shore, and then my crew were there waiting for me, and they were able to help me out of the water, and that was pretty amazing. That was a really nice feeling. But thankfully, I was still kind of like cognitively intact enough that I could talk to them and just say, look, I've been lying down for 12 hours. We just have to take it slowly. And, they were really good, because it's a very rocky beach that I landed at. So you just got to be really, really careful that you don't fall over and hurt yourself on the rock as well. So they were amazing helping me out. And, I was able to wave at the boat and say thank you, and say thank you to my kayaker. So yeah, it was overall a really, really good swim.
Awesome, and a great introduction to the race, which is fabulous. Tell us more about your support team. Like, so you mentioned sort of your crew and stuff like that. How many people did you have with you? Have they crewed with you before? Are you paying them? Like, how much did it cost to get the support team over there?
Yeah. Okay. So I had my husband, who he has crewed for me at 3 of the 4 races I've done previously. Yeah, no, 3 of the 4 races that I've done. So he's crewed at a couple of Ultramans before, and I love having him there. Like, he's generally my crew chief. He's in charge of everything. He knows me better than anyone, and he's really good. Like, he can just look at me and be like, okay, I know what you need. I know how you're feeling, and I don't generally have to communicate that to him. So I had him. I had another friend, Will, he's crewed for me a couple of times as well. He came down from Canada and drove his car down. So that was really good. So we had an extra vehicle that can kind of go to and fro from the RV that was our main support. I had a friend, Willie, from Sydney. So I said to them, I said, look, I can't afford to get you all to the race start. So financially, if you can pay to get there, then I'll give you my credit card when we get there. And then you can, I'll pay for whatever expenses are needed during the time. And so they were all in agreement with that. Because I was like, look, this is costing us as much as it is, and I can't afford to fly everybody in from different places, and so they were really accommodating, really lovely to agree to that. Yeah, so my friend Willie from Sydney, I've known him for like over 10 years. When I relatively started in triathlon, when I started doing like half Ironman, I met him around that time, and then I had 3 women that I met at Ultraman Hawaii last year. So I had Mary, Josie, and Heidi. And they're all really, really good friends. And it was actually really interesting. We're at the welcome dinner at Ultraman Hawaii, and I was just chatting to them and like, oh, do you have any other race plans? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this race called UberMan. And on the spot, they all went, do you need crew? We're coming. And that was absolutely amazing. And then, it was like the next year was a few months later where I was, sending out messages. I'm like, hey, I know you guys said yes at the time, but, is that still okay? You're still keen? They're all like, yep, 100%, we will be there. And they were just incredible. So, I probably spent maybe an hour with them totally over the whole time. And they're like, yep, we'll be there, we'll come. So that was, it shows the family ultra spirit. It's pretty incredible. So I had those 3. And then I had a couple of people so one guy, Ken, he was around for the bike and then the start of the run, and then he had to go home. And then I had another friend who I'd stayed with in San Diego for those couple of weeks, and he was like, oh, I really want to come for the run. I really want to come. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see how you go. And then, so he came up and met us on the run and then stayed until the end, which I said to him, I was like, as soon as you came, I knew you weren't going to go home. So he's like, I just couldn't leave. And I'm like, I understand. It gets pretty exciting when you're getting towards the end as well. So, yeah, that was really cool just to, have everybody around. And we ended up making the crew into 2 teams. So basically all of my ideas came from other events about how to manage when you have people going through the day and then going through the night, because I planned on having minimal sleep. So I was like, well, I don't want my crew to have less sleep than I do. So how am I going to manage this? So I looked towards what they do at RAM, the Race Across America cycle race, and they generally have 2 teams. So you'll have a day team and then a night team, and then they'll just rotate shifts. And so that's the way that I set it up. So the girls were on the day shift, and then the boys were on the night shift. And so then I had, Will's car that they could jump in and, take off and go find accommodation, go find some food, restock in whatever's needed. And then they'd come back and then swap over for the next shift. It worked relatively well. I mean, after the first night on the bike, the girls got caught up in a lot of traffic because there was some fires nearby, and so there was a lot of roads that were closed. So that didn't quite work out, but it's one of those things. What do you do? I wasn't going to sit on the side of the road for 3 hours waiting for them. So it was Michael and Willie at that stage that were around, and they're like, well, just keep going and we'll just, figure it out as we go. So it worked really well, and everyone was just amazing. They all just basically went, we're here for you. We're here to help. We're here to basically do whatever you want, whatever you need. And they were just incredible. It's one of those things where there's no way I would have been successful without that kind of support around me. So it was really, really good.
Absolutely. You've got an incredibly supportive team. You're coming out of the water. It's a little bit rocky. You've obviously been lying down on your front for 12 hours swimming. You've been vomiting. You've got, your neck being rubbed raw. You haven't been peeing. But you've got to transition onto the bike to do, 400 miles, 600K, 600 plus K. Tell us about the transition and I always think it's weird, like the first time you've gone from swimming for so long, your body's feeling a bit like jelly, to then getting on the bike. What was that like?
Yeah, so what I did, and I'd always planned to do it this way, is I actually slept for a couple of hours, because when I did a 20-kilometer swim at the pretty sure it was the start of 2018. I did that one. Yes. So there's a swim in Australia, Rottnest Island, channel swim. So I did that one. And when I got out of the water, I felt really dizzy. Like my head was still washing around like I was still in the water. And so I was like, okay, well, if I feel like that coming out of the water, if I sleep for a couple of hours, then hopefully that'll kind of rectify that feeling. And plus, I've been going since, for 12 hours, it'd probably be sensible to have a bit of a sleep before I get on the bike, because I was getting on the bike into quite busy area of LA because we went up, through Miami and, kind of went north that way. So I didn't want to, be trying to navigate all the traffic and, riding on an opposite side of the road that I'm used to and kind of all of those things. So we had the RV parked in a car park. So I just walked up to there, got changed out of my bathers, put my pajamas on, had something to eat, and then slept for a couple of hours and then got on the bike. So it actually worked quite well.
So how was the bike journey? What was the route like? What were the road conditions like? Were you able to get into your rhythm pretty quickly?
So the start of the bike, I knew there was going to be a lot of traffic and a lot of, kind of people around and cars around. So I also wanted to get out of the city as quickly as possible. So I had my bike maps on my Garmin, which was really, really handy. And I was actually quite accurate. I think they must have improved the software or something, because it used to tell you off course all the time, but it didn't at all. It was really good. And my crew were actually able to keep up with me for majority of the time as well, because we weren't entirely sure what the traffic's going to be like, because you always hear about LA traffic just being insane and, you can be sitting in the one spot for 3 hours and whatever. So I was like, well, we'll have to play it by ear. There was an option to use the bike path, but I was mostly on the road initially, just because if you're on the bike path, you actually weren't visible from the road. And it's like, well, then my crew don't know where I am. If I'm on a certain section and they haven't seen me, they've missed me, then, they don't know. So it was kind of a bit like, man, that's not as effective as what it would be. I ended up on the Pacific Coast Highway heading out of town once I got through all the, busy sections. And that was actually really, really beautiful. That was really nice, like along the coast. I was on that with, nice wide shoulder as well, as you would know because you cycled that.
I was just thinking that, like, oh my God, I've been the same route. I'm very excited.
Yeah. I mean, I was going the other way, but still, you know where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it was really beautiful. And so, I mean, I honestly have no idea where the bike route went, because I'm like, well, we went along there and then we turned right and then we went into the hills. And people are like, oh, was this at this area, this at this area? And we're like, I don't know where I was. So I ended up riding, and then I got on the first day about 150K into the ride. And I was like, all right, I'm starting to feel a bit tired. I'm kind of wanting to eat something else except for all my sports nutrition. Like I wanted some pasta, I wanted some carbs, I wanted something a little bit more substantial. And so my crew were like, okay, come off, like sit in. Every time I stopped, I changed my bike kit as well, because I brought like maybe 5 or 6 kits, because I wanted to try and reduce the risk of getting chafing and, like any kind of issues as well that were going to make my life a lot harder. So I'd always get changed in my pajamas whenever I lay down. So, just give my lady parts time to breathe as well, for anyone who wears Lycra a lot. Yeah, so I got off for, I think it was probably about an hour or so, just had to lie down. I wasn't able to sleep, but it was actually really nice not to be kind of on the bike for that period of time. And then I said to my crew, I'm like, look, I wouldn't mind hitting about 200 Ks, and then I'll stop, have a proper sleep, sleep for a couple of hours, and then get up with the sun and, get up in the morning and go again. And they're like, yeah, okay. And then it ended up getting to about 4 o'clock in the morning, and, they were really tired. I was getting really tired. And they're like, okay, we're just going to find a spot on the side of the road, and as close to 200 Ks as you are, we're just going to stop there. And I was like, yep, no worries. I'm happy with that. And then we stopped, and I was at 198, and my husband goes to me, how close are you? And I was like, I'm done. It's fine. Whatever. I don't care. And he's like, okay, good, because we're done as well and we need to sleep. That was great. And then I was up again and on the road by, I think it was about like 7:30 in the morning, because, I mean, like I slept for 2 hours, but there's also the time, I was in my Normatec boots and I was eating, and, then on the other side, like I was getting up and getting dressed and getting organized. So, yeah, it was kind of a every time you stop, there was a couple of hours sleep, but then was the time at the start, either side, where you're getting organised. And so I was back on the bike again, and then this is where it gets a little hazy in my mind, because it literally feels like it was one long continuous day, because it was like punctuated by kind of little sleep breaks, and then that was kind of it. So I rode probably majority of the day until I got to maybe like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was when the girls were crewing for me at that time. And I stopped at one stage and I said, look, I'm feeling really angry. And every time my mood changes, I always immediately go to nutrition. I'm like, okay, obviously my glucose level is low. Like, I need to eat a bit more. And I said to Heidi, I said, look, I'm feeling really angry. I'm eating a lot. It's not helping. So obviously it's fatigue. And then I started to go a bit cross-eyed, and I was like, okay, I need to stop and sleep. Like, this is my body telling me, you need a rest. You've been going for long enough. It's time to have a lie down for a bit. And we're on a highway at that point, but there was a nice kind of big gravel section that, the RV was able to pull off. So it was completely off the road. And I said to them, look, can you just find out how long we're on this highway for? I'm happy to keep riding for a little bit, but, don't make me ride for, like longer than like maybe half hour or so, because I'm going to need to sleep pretty quickly, because I know that when I'm doing something like this and I get fatigued very, very quickly. So I need to, stop and sleep relatively soon. Otherwise, I'm going to start swerving all over the road, and then it's just not going to be safe for anyone. And then they stopped maybe like, I don't know, a couple of Ks down the road, and they said, look, we're on this for another 20 kilometres, but they felt comfortable in me stopping there on the side of the road and said, this will be fine to stop here. And I was like, oh, okay, yep, no worries. Because that was one of the main things as well, is like, we don't really know the road rules in terms of where you're allowed to stop for an extended period of time. And, especially when we got into the national park as well, we're like, we don't really know where we're allowed to stop and not allowed to stop. Like, can you pull over to the side of the road for a few hours or not? Like, that was something that I didn't really consider until we're kind of there. And I was like, oh, I hope someone else knows the answer to these questions. But it ended up being okay, because we're in car parks. So I ended up stopping and sleeping. I think I stopped for maybe like 2-3 hours, and then got back up again and got riding again. And that I always found that, especially on the bike, sleeping for about 2 hours really refreshed me, and then I was ready to go again. So that seemed to be like a good period of time, 2-3 hours, and then I was like, all right, and then I could continue on for a longer period of time. And then it was when it got dark on the first night, I said to my crew, I'm like, look, I'm riding on these strange back roads. I feel a bit isolated. I feel a bit worried about, like, how visible am I, if something happens to me. And so because we had a car and the RV at that point in time, because we had Ken with his car, he was able to kind of take the guys away, and they had to sleep, and let's take the girls away, sorry. And then, we had Will with his truck. So that was really good. So he was able to follow me, and it wasn't the RV, which was, big and would have been blocking the whole road basically. So he was able to direct follow at nighttime. So that made me feel a lot safer. And so on the second night, we were looking at the profile, and we're getting, I was getting a bit tired, and the guys are like, okay, well, if you can get over this climb, get down the other side, then, we'll stop there. And there's a really quite big climb towards the end of the whole ride that, I just said to them, I kept saying, I'm like, I don't want to do that descent in the dark, because, it's quite a long descent. It was probably about maybe like 20, 25K. And I don't want to do that in the dark. Like, that's going to be way, way too much. And they're like, yeah, no worries. And so like, okay, get over this little climb, and then we'll, then you can have a stop after that. But I found as I was going up that little climb, it wasn't even really that steep, but I found I was really struggling to concentrate. And I just stopped and said, no, I'm stopping to sleep. Like, I'm not concentrating going up. So I know my concentration is going to be worse going down. And that's when I need to be actually really focused on what's ahead of me. And they went, okay, yep, no worries. And like, we had that mutual respect between us to say, if I'm saying I need to stop, or if they tell me they think I need to stop, then we both just listen to each other. So that was really, really good. And then riding that section the next day, I was so glad that I had stopped during the night, because it was probably one of the most scenic, one of the most beautiful sections of the whole ride, because I rode through this kind of canyon area where I was descending, and it was just absolutely stunning. And I was just amazed at the scenery. So it was kind of one of those moments I'm like, I actually feel like I made the right decision for both, safety reasons, because I wasn't able to descend safely anyway, but also just to, miss out on that scenery and then realize I'd missed it out later. I'm like, oh, that's really disappointing. So it was kind of one of those meant to be moments, which I was pretty happy about.
Were you competing or were you trying to complete? How aware were you of the times that you were doing and the fact that you'd already broken like the swim record and whether or not you knew that you were on target to break the bike course record as well?
I always had the plan to do between 5 to 6 days for the whole course. And that was my only focus. So everything else was kind of a bonus. When I was thinking about the event and how long it was going to take me, in my mind, I kind of had the perfect world scenario. And the perfect world scenario was to swim 12 to 14 hours, which I swam just under 12 hours. So I did that. My bike was going to be about 2.5 days, and ended up being just over 2 days. And then the run about 2.5 to 3 days, which was basically bang in the middle of that. That was always kind of in my mind. I'm like, oh, that'd be nice. But it was always, I want to finish between 5 to 6 days because I wanted to beat the overall record, which was just over 6 days. Just over 6 days, I think like 7-ish days. So I don't ever feel like I had a racing mindset to the event. I always just wanted to complete it. There was one other guy, he ended up beating the bike course record. I was told misinformation, but that's okay, that happens. But I didn't even consider the swim course record until the race director, the guy Dan, had said to me when he saw me after the swim, he's like, oh, you beat the course record. I'm like, oh yeah, of course I did, because I remember him saying, oh, no one swum like 12 hours. And he's like, oh, so I don't think anyone's going to do that. So, I don't have to be down there at the beach that early. And I was like, oh, interesting. And it wasn't really until I was coming in towards the beach when I was looking at my Garmin going, I can come under 12 hours. Yeah, all right. Let's give it a final little push to make sure I do come in under 12 hours. So really, like, I had kind of lost track of time and days and everything. And then I realized, I'd done the bike, obviously quite quickly. It ended up being about 51 hours. I did the bike in total. And then when I'd actually finished, I thought I'd taken 6 days to do it. I didn't realize I was at 5 days. So that was, I guess, I knew that I'd done quicker and I'd got the, overall course record, like beaten the overall course record. Another guy, Adam, had finished ahead of me. So he finished like first overall, which, awesome. I wasn't really competing against him. I was always just aiming to do, the overall time, but I'd completely lost track of time and days and everything. I had no idea.
It's even crazy to think, because sometimes it's quite difficult to almost put it into how many days this takes. Because how long were you out there for?
It was 5 days, 15 hours and 55 minutes, or 135 hours and 55 minutes.
Oh, incredible.
Originally, Dan said it was 139 hours. I was like, oh, yeah, cool. And then like I had these people messaging me going, no, you did it faster than that. I was following your tracker. I was like, oh, okay. I don't know. I don't care. I finished it.
But let's talk about the run, because you said previously that running has been one of your weaknesses, and that's something that you focused on specifically in training. You were doing these 50k running races, so you weren't going to be intimidated by that distance. You'd done 100, the most you'd ever done I think was like 80k or 60k, and then you'd done a 100k run before the actual running part. How was the running, and was it through Death Valley?
Yeah. So you start at Badwater Basin in Death Valley, and then you run through there, through to Stovepipe, over to Furnace Creek, and then Furnace Creek to Lone Pine, then up to Mt Whitney. So I remember all those points. Yeah, so I finished the bike. It was around like 4:30-ish in the evening. So I managed to then stop, have a sleep for a couple of hours, and then started running. It was probably around like 9:30 p.m. I started running. So I did the first, I think it was about 20-ish kilometers, because from the basin there's a big hotel, the Oasis Hotel, which kind of sits in the middle of nowhere, but there's a really big car park there. So I ran through to there, and I think I was running for maybe like 3 hours or something, and then stopped to have a sleep. And the first person who was running with me was my friend Willie, and he's done a bunch of like super long ultra races. So I was asking him, I was like, look, I don't really know how to approach this. Like, obviously, I'm running over 200 Ks. I've never run that far. Like, what do I do? What should I do? Like, how much should I run? How much should I walk? And he just said to me, he's like, because obviously I knew I was going to walk all the hills, but I just wasn't sure about how to manage the flats. And he just said, just walk lots, run a little bit when you want, when you can, but just take it easy, and just run for short periods and then sleep for longer periods. And I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, because obviously the fatigue's well and truly building up in my body at that point. And it was just about also trying to keep out of the heat of the day, because the heat of the day was, I think it was around like 1 till 4-ish p.m. So that was getting up to probably mid to high 30s, or, kind of in the 90s Fahrenheit. So it was getting pretty hot. Like, it's not the super, super hot weather that you get during the Death Valley run, but it's still pretty hot. And like, I've got a lot of ways that I manage heat, but I know that my resilience is definitely lowered when I'm incredibly fatigued. So I just had to be really, really careful about that. So I just, I ran through to the Oasis Hotel, and we stopped there. I slept for a couple of hours, and then I got up when the sun was coming up, and then ran the next section through to Stovepipe. And I found that was probably the hardest section to do, that because it was getting quite hot. It was probably getting around midday, and I was incredibly fatigued. And the last like 5-6 Ks, I was like, I just want to sleep. I just want to stop and sleep. But I knew that I had to get to the Stovepipe car park, because then, there was a nice big space for the RV to be, and then I could sleep in the air conditioning, and it was much, much better. And so then I had like a decent sleep before then I started the big climb that I'd ridden the bike on the previous day. So it was just, there was a couple of times I was like, you just got to keep pushing through to this certain point, and then you can stop and sleep.
How did you find it when you stopping, obviously getting some sleep in, or which you need to do, but then starting up again? Because I sometimes I found, like, when I was on my walk on the Camino, I'd be walking for maybe an hour, and then I'd stop for 15 minutes, and I'd start walking again. Like, my whole body had like seized up with all my muscles. How was that for you? Or did you know that was going to be a challenging bit, and you just pushed on through, or were you not sort of experiencing that? Yeah.
Oh my God, I definitely experienced that. It's actually really interesting. Like, if you, because we were making a documentary, so I'm sure you'll see it on the documentary, that whenever I started running again, like, I would be kind of hobbling, I'd be, really stiff and everything, and it'd take a little while for my muscles and my legs to start loosening up again. And I always knew that they would, and that's just something that I knew was going to happen. And it's just one of those things, like, even if for me, when I was training, like, sometimes, if you had a really hard session the day before and your legs are a bit stiff and sore, like, it'd take a little bit of time to warm up. And it takes time for me to warm up anyway when I'm doing normal sessions. So it was just something that I knew was going to happen. I just had to, wait until like they warmed up and they felt a little bit looser, and then I could start moving again. So I always just started with a walk before I started running or anything.
Tell us about Mount Whitney.
Oh, that was incredible. So it's actually interesting. Like, I was saying to my crew like the day before, and I'm like, I'm going to finish today. But I didn't actually realize how, because I had no idea how much longer I was going for, because my Garmin had stop and save every time we put it on charge when I was sleeping. So I didn't know what my total distance was. I'm like, I'm going to finish today. And then I ended up like finishing the following day, which was totally fine. I mean, as I said, I'd lost track of days and things by that stage. So I had always thought in my head, like, if I can plan it, I want to finish during the day. I've seen so many pictures of Mount Whitney. I've seen so many beautiful pictures of the scenery. One of the guy who was assisting Graham, who was in the documentary, George, he'd driven the route previously and sent a picture that Graham had shown me. He's like, this is what you're going to be looking at the finish line. I was like, oh my God, I want to see that during the day. So I was really, really fortunate that I managed to finish the Lone Pine section in the middle of the night. So I slept and then got up and got going during the morning. So I ended up finishing about 2 p.m., which was amazing. It was funny. So we went through Lone Pine, and because it's, you know, a flat little town before you start the climb, I was like, I said, because I had a crew member every time I was on the run, which is amazing, because it was actually a really nice time to bond with each individual as we're going along. So that was awesome. And I said to Willie, who was with me, I was like, okay, let's just do a little run so we can actually pretend like we've run today, because I knew that we're just going to be walking the whole climb. So yeah, you know, we turned out of Lone Pine and then just started going up, and it's about a 20-kilometer climb. Yeah, and I just kept going. Like, you know, I again wasn't trying to break any records with this climb. You know, I wasn't power walking fast. Like, generally when I'm doing races, like, you know, I'll power walk up hills, but I was just, you know, kind of walking at a comfortable pace, because I was like, well, you know, I still want to get through this whole thing. And I think it was about the last like 5-ish kilometers it really kicks up, and it's quite steep. So it was just a matter of, you know, just keep going, one foot in front of the other. And then my thing's always like, I don't care how far it is, but can you know, ask my crew just to tell me how far it is to the tops. And then mentally I'm like, okay, you know, I can work on my total distance and then just start counting off the kilometers as we're going along. And yeah, you know, so that was always quite helpful. I did have, you know, a couple of emotional moments as I was going up, which I generally do, especially towards the end an event, because it just the kind of the enormity of what's happened all just kind of hits me. And I was like, wow, you know, this has happened, I've done this. And, you know, I always have thoughts of my previous coach, Craig, who passed away. And, you know, I always kind of feel his presence around when I'm doing really, really big events. So, you know, shed a couple of tears for him as well as we're going along. And then as I got to the top, you know, to where the finish line was, there was, you know, all my crew, which was absolutely incredible. And then there was a few people who, you know, just other bushwalkers and hikers who were around. And this one woman had said to me, she goes, oh, you know, we saw you coming up, and, you know, we knew that we just had to stay around to, you know, to watch you finish. And, you know, I had just, you know, these other random people just cheering and clapping, and that was amazing. And, you know, I finished, and then they said to me, okay, so what have you actually done? where have you come from? But obviously they realized that, you know, something was happening that they wanted to, you know, find out about and be a part of. So that was amazing. And yeah, like I finished, and then, you know, just had tears and hugs and everything from the crew, and, you know, so took lots of photos and everything. And it was just, oh my God, it's just magical. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it and talking about it. It was, yeah, just absolutely incredible.
It's so difficult to even comprehend what I mean, actually, somebody wrote a post on your Facebook wall, which is like, you know, UberMan, Ultra Triathlon with a 21-mile, 33-kilometer swim of Catalina Channel, which is like the US version of the English Channel, a 400-mile, 600-kilometer bike ride, equivalent to 5 stages of the Tour de France, with over 20,000 feet of elevation gain and dropping into 282 below sea level into Badwater Basin, where you start running the third leg, 135 miles from there to Mount Whitney. It's just... I mean, it is phenomenal. I mean, have you managed to process what you've achieved?
No, absolutely not. Like, I mean, we're recording this on the 2nd of November, and I finished on the 15th of October, and I still just sit there and like, wow, I did that? Really? I did that? Like, what? How? Huh? It was interesting, because afterwards a couple of my crew were saying, you know, like that was an absolutely life-changing experience for them. And then, you know, just asking me about, you know, well, what about you? Like, how do you feel about it all? And I still have the same answer. I'm like, I don't know, and it's going to take me a couple of months, like a couple of months of processing and sorting it all out in my head, and then I think I might have an answer to like the impact that it's had on my life, and be actually able to comprehend what I've done. But at the moment, it still feels like just this abstract idea about something that happened, but it doesn't feel like reality. It's just it's still kind of very, very strange, but amazing at the same time.
Tell me about the documentary, because that sounds phenomenal. Obviously, I'm very excited about watching it. Do you know when that's going to come out?
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. So the guy who did it, Graham, he's actually one of a work colleague of one of the guys who was crewing for me, Will. So, he actually approached me and said, I want to get into documentary filmmaking. Would it be okay if I come and do a documentary on UberMan? I was like, yes, absolutely. That would be incredible. So, I mean, at this stage, the answer is I don't know. I don't know what is going to come of it yet, which is totally fine. I was talking to a friend earlier on today, and I just said, look, I don't want to have any emotional attachment to the outcome of what's going to happen with this. Like, it might end up on YouTube. It might, go further. It might go to film festivals. I have no idea. And whatever it is, I will have a documentation of this incredible event that I did and, everybody involved in it. And that is going to be amazing. And anything else that goes on from that, then that'll be, icing on the cake, really. So I'm waiting to hear from Graham about what a realistic time frame is going to be for him to be able to pull it all together. And then our plan is to have kind of a screening in Melbourne, just, family and friends. And I'm not sure how many people will be able to come. So we might just have to kind of limit it to, kind of people within my circle and community. And then, wherever it goes from there, then obviously, people in the wider universe will be able to see it as well. So a lot of kind of up in the air, not entirely sure, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then when I'm a bit clearer, then I'll be able to, announce a lot more information about it. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see with that.
Yeah. How has the transition been from finishing the race? Because you shared a Facebook post recently about adventure blues, and I know that you've been working on your mindset, so that almost doesn't happen. But how are you finding this time period, not having to train, not having to do 27 hours of training a week, and while working a full-time job and managing everything else, and just suddenly having oh my God, free time? Do you have free time?
Yes, and it's amazing. So one thing that I do, especially when I'm deep in my training and, dragging my sorry little carcass around trying to, get all my sessions done and everything, is I start to imagine the post-race recovery time and, start to get excited about it and look forward to it. So now that it's here, it's actually really cool. So we flew home, as I said, a week ago, and I go back to work on Monday. So I've had, a few days at home just to get back into the swing of things, get back into a little bit more of a routine per se. I don't really feel any of that kind of post-race blues or anything, which is really nice. I do have a lot of spare time, which is awesome, which I'm filling up with watching, Netflix and things that I've missed out on, and, catching up with friends and family and kind of things like that. At the moment, I haven't really had any desire to do any exercise, which I just feel is completely fine. I don't put any pressure on myself to do anything unless I want to. If I don't want to do it, then I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Obviously you're not ready. So I will just wait until the desire comes, and then I'll go out and do something, and it'll probably be pretty short, and then I'll feel quite tired afterwards, and then take a couple of days off, which again, I don't mind about. So what I do is I just give myself this time. I don't set a deadline on when I have to start training again as well. So when I talk about training, I mean as in training on a program, back with my coach, back following a structure. So for now, I just call this my exercise, period. If I want to do something, then I do. If I don't, then I don't. Previously I've driven to the pool, I've got out of my car, and then I've been like, actually, I don't really want to swim. So then I just got back in my car and drove home. So, it's kind of that absolutely zero pressure on myself to have to do anything, just because, throughout the year when I am on a training program, it's all about structure and pressure and getting every single session done and all of those things. So I'm actually really enjoying having spare time and saying yes to social engagements and yes to friends. And it's a really, really nice time that I do enjoy as much as I enjoy training.
Oh, do you know what? I think that's so important. And I'd love to ask you, I mean, this has been almost like a 10-year ultra journey, and you've literally reached the pinnacle of what you can achieve, because UberMan is just a completely different kettle of fish. And this is talking to someone who's done like Epic 5 as well. Over that time period, what do you think you've learned most about yourself?
Yeah, I have learnt that a belief that I've developed over the years, that there actually is no limits. There is no limits to the human potential about physically and mentally what we can do. It's really only limits that we set on ourselves and the goals that we set out to achieve. So, I mean, I know that if I had set the goal of doing UberMan and then turning around and going back the other direction, and I'd trained for that, then I know I'd be able to. But mentally, I'd prepared myself to do UberMan one way, and then that was it. And that's, that was where my finish line was. But I truly believe that, if I set my mind to doing some other crazy, ridiculous adventure, then it absolutely is possible, because I don't think there actually is any limits to what we can do.
Oh my God, I think you've just told us what your next challenge is going to be.
Oh, no chance. No chance.
It used to be like double Ironman.
Kill me.
double UberMan. Like, oh my God.
Oh, Jesus. No, someone else can do that. Someone else take the baton, please. Happy to help with your preparation, but not going to do it.
So you do have a blog, which is awesome, and you write race reports, and I know you're obviously going to be writing a race report about UberMan and what was involved in that. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
Yeah, I have, and I think that will be probably my next big project in the next year or two, to start putting pen to paper and being a lot more kind of structured and stringent around writing a book. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so excited, because I'm just sat here thinking, like, I mean, it's amazing to speak with you, and I'm just thinking, I still feel as though there's so much more to learn, to gain, because there's just so much information. I can't wait to watch the documentary. You obviously need to write a book, and we need these blog posts coming out. How can people follow along with you, find out more about you? Where is the best place for them to go?
Yes. So I recently set up a Facebook athlete page. So that's probably where a lot of my sporting adventures and things are going to go. So that is Melissa Urie Ultra Endurance Athlete. So that's a really good spot. And Instagram, I'm at Rangamel. So it's RANGAMEL. And I've got that handle on Twitter as well. I don't really use Twitter that much. Facebook and Instagram are probably my two little pet places that I put a lot of stuff up on. And then my blog is rangamel.wordpress.com. And I will be getting around to my race report for this one. I just haven't really had the mental space to sit down and start writing it yet, but I will. I keep getting asked about that.
No, but actually I think that's like, how was the recovery? Like, I mean, how is the recovery going? Because I suppose, the adrenaline and everything else gets you to the finish line, gets you back to the hotel. But when did your body suddenly go, right, oh, we're done, let's crash, we need to, like, obviously sleep for like a week, if not longer? When did that happen?
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. I pulled up physically in terms of being able to walk around and having a bit of energy pretty much straight away. Like the next day, my husband kept looking at me. He's like, "You're walking so well." Like I was hobbling a little bit, but nowhere near as bad as what I have done after previous races. But I also put that down to not having blisters on my feet, so I didn't have that kind of extra pain that I was trying to manage. But yeah, within that night, I think I slept solidly for maybe about 5-6 hours, and I was wide awake for a couple of hours because, I had 5 nights of just minimal little chunky bits of sleep. So my body didn't even know what day-night sleep was by that stage because I just completely screwed up my my sleep cycle. So it took, a good while. I think even probably until I actually got home. because we flew home on the 24th. But before that, you know, basically every night without fail around midnight, 2 a.m., I'd be awake for at least an hour or two, you know, wide awake, not being able to get back to sleep. I didn't have that kind of post-race swelling mass blow up of my body that I previously have had, which was quite interesting. I'm not entirely sure why that was, but, you know, I'll take that as a win. But even now I find that I'll be okay, and like my energy levels will be quite good. And then it'll get to kind of early evening and I'll just start to get really, really tired. So probably around like, you know, 8 o'clock. And I'll just be like, okay, now I just need to go to bed, because I know that I won't be able to fight through that like I normally would be able to. I just get absolutely exhausted very, very quickly. So that's something that I feel will probably still hang around for a little while. Oh, that's right. Initially in the first couple of days, like I would be fine, and then I'd suddenly feel really nauseous and really dizzy and just feel really, really sick, and like have to basically just lie down and wait for it to pass, and then I'd be okay again. So yeah, my body kind of had these like waves, and that hung around for a good like 3-4 days before this kind of fatigue where I'll be okay and then I'll just need to crash. And I mean, after Epic 5, it took me probably about 6 months before I stopped feeling the fatigue in my body and my muscles every time I tried to do any form of training or anything. And I suspect that's probably going to be roughly the same after this. Like any massive events, generally it takes me, you know, months before I stop feeling that just real heavy fatigue in my muscles, which, you know, that's normal. I expect that.
Melissa, it's incredible speaking with you, and I'm so glad that we've been able to follow your journey along. And like I mentioned at the start, you know, please do go back and listen to the first episode that we spoke to you about 27 about Epic 5, and then the episode that we did in February 2019 where you shared more about like Ultraman in Hawaii, but also more details about UberMan, the training, the nutrition, your what you're eating, Vegemite, mental preparation, vision boards, you know, everything else like that. But Miss, I'd love for you to leave our audience with just, I don't know, just like final words of advice for women who are thinking, do you know what? I'd love to do a physical challenge. Maybe not UberMan or Epic 5, but they, you know, they want to get out of their comfort zone and do something which is going to fit, you know, challenge them both physically and mentally. What advice and top tips would you have for them?
Yeah. So the way that I choose races is that, does it excite me? Does it scare me? And if it fits those two criteria, then absolutely, you know, I sign up for it. So if it's something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, that's actually where I find my comfort zone, is that discomfort. So yeah, it's kind of, you really got to find the ability to find comfort in the uncomfortable. I think that's probably the bit that a lot of people are quite scared about, but it's actually really good to try and push yourself into that zone. If you find a race or an event or something that does seem quite big and daunting, then my advice would be to find something that's a little bit smaller, to use it as a stepping stone to get to the bigger race. Because I sign up for really big races, but then do smaller races throughout the year to build my confidence, to build, you know, my endurance, to build on, you know, the ability then to realize that, yes, I can get through the bigger one. So that would probably be my takeaway. You know, try and find something that scares you and excites you, pushes you a bit further, and find little steps and little achievements that you can tick off along the way to that big goal as well.
Absolutely phenomenal. Melissa, thank you so much for coming back on the Tough Girl Podcast Extra. It's been incredible chatting with you.
No worries, Sarah. Thanks for having me back.
Hey Tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Melissa. What an absolute superstar. Everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. So please do go check out the website where you can find more information about me, my background, more information about the previous guests that we've had on the Tough Girl podcast. There's over 230 episodes now. There's a huge amount of content on the website. So please do go check that out, toughgirlchallenges.com. tough.girlchallenge.com. You can also find all of the links to social media channels at Tough Girl Challenges on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube channel, all of that good stuff. So well worth checking out. New episodes of the Tough Girl podcast come out on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time, and Tough Girl extra episodes come out on a Thursday at 7 a.m. UK time. Next Tuesday, we're going to be catching up with Jasmine Muller, who's going to be sharing more about ultra cycling, breaking records, dealing with failure, and giving top tips and advice about saddle sores. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, and if you haven't left a review, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes, because that would be fabulous. All right, take care, have a wonderful day, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.